Hello, how are you all? I hope you're doing well. I have quite a show for you today. This story is unbelievable, and thank you to Brian Enton with Newsmax. He's turned into one of my favorite reporters. Very objective, and he's going after stories that a lot of people are not talking about. And this one in particular is alarming. So this is about baby farms that are essentially in California. So what Brian Enton discovered now, as the topic of conversation and the debate about birthright citizenship is happening, if you've been paying attention to the Trump administration, one of his executive orders was to remove this misrepresentation and abuse by our birthright citizenship. And basically, birthright citizenship, the 14th Amendment, that part of it, was intended to be for emancipated slaves. So it was intended to be protection for slaves that were emancipated to protect them here. And obviously, we don't have that issue anymore. But since then, it's never been modified. And because of a Supreme Court decision a long time ago that many people say was a horrible decision, and we'll get more into that later, this has been misrepresented and is allowing something called birth tourism. It's allowing people that are not in our country illegal immigrants to abuse this. And essentially, you'll have people that come, have a baby in America, go back to their country, and now that baby has dual citizenship. And a lot of times, that's what they call anchor babies. That baby will then bring the family, and then that is a pathway to citizenship for all of them. So let's get into what's going on with this specifically. So what Brian Enton uncovered is basically a birth tourism situation that's happening with surrogates where American women are being inseminated and being paid up to $70,000 to have Chinese babies. And that baby, so they're being put up in hotels, and then when that baby is birthed, they're actually, once it's healthy enough, taken back to China, raised in China, and then that baby has that dual citizenship. So clearly, this is a big national security concern, and this is obviously an abuse of our birthright citizenship, something that should have been modified a long time ago or should have been clarified. So let's get into Brian Enton and this whole story. This is wild.
Chinese couples are hiring American surrogates and having them give birth to their kids in America. Then the Chinese couple comes over after the birth and takes the kid back to China with a U.S. passport. In the 2000s, everybody talked about pregnant women coming to America on tourist visas and then giving birth in the United States to a child with automatic American citizenship. It was called birth tourism. Now the Chinese families are taking it a step further. In the words of Brian Enton, renting a womb. NewsNation senior correspondent Brian Enton is with us now for his exclusive reporting. Brian, is this a one-off thing, or is this actually happening at scale?
No, it's happened tens of thousands of times across the United States. We learned when we went out to California, Leland. We went out to look into the birth tourism scheme because there's been a lot of recent busts involving the feds, even though it's been going on for a long time. And they've sort of got that under control, and it's against the law because these women overstay their visas. They come on a tourist visa, they stay, they have the baby, and then they go back to China. But while we were in California, we learned about this new rent-a-womb scheme, which is almost more alarming because it is not illegal. It's a loophole. This is actually one of the motels that we went into where some of the pregnant women stay. And basically with the rent-a-wombs, you've got these parents in China who spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's happening thousands of times. And they pay a woman in America that has the sperm and the egg from China inside of them. They use the American womb. The American woman gives birth to the Chinese baby, and then the baby gets the U.S. passport, but immediately goes back to China with no allegiance whatsoever to America, but is an American citizen. I spoke to the acting U.S. attorney in Los Angeles about this. They are very alarmed. Listen to this, Leland. What happens in 20 years? Is there any concern that they could become spies, that the Chinese government could use them somehow because they'll have the American passport?
Anytime that somebody has a U.S. passport. It means that they have access to the United States. They will give you the example. Child born in Irvine in 2015 goes back and ultimately joins the Chinese military at age 20, having a U.S. passport. That provides a real national security asset to China and a real problem to the United States.
So they might be babies now, Leland, but just like the acting U.S. attorney said, the concern is in 20 years if they're in the Chinese army and they possess a U.S. passport and they can come and go freely, that is very, very valuable to the Chinese government. And by the way, cost $200,000 roughly to do this, not against the law. The American women make about $70,000 to have the Chinese baby. Leland?
Stunning. Follow the money always. And there's no way to stop this short of what? A law and then somehow trying to change birthright citizenship?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a couple of Congress people right now. They had a hearing up on the Hill about it last month that are very concerned. It's a loophole. The U.S. attorney is concerned, but there's no way to stop it right now. I mean, obviously, President Trump is looking into the whole birthright citizenship thing, but yeah, they're getting away with it.
Yeah, and already have tens of thousands of babies. So the Chinese play the long game. They always have. Brian, thank you.
So that is wild. And we're about to get to small clips from that hearing that Brian was discussing. But before we do that, let me just take you to this executive order. So this has been a long time that people have been really critical of this birthright citizenship and how it's being interpreted and also how it's being abused. Now, typically, I don't know if you've ever watched that show, it's like Border something, but it's about Border Patrol agents in the airport. And actually, if you're really far along in your pregnancy and you're coming to the United States and you don't have a plan with and you don't have a plan, they will not let you come into the United States because this is such an issue. But clearly, people are using loopholes. They're still able to do this. And again, we're going to get farther into this. But this was an executive order that one of the first ones that Trump signed. By the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, I hereby ordered Section 1, purpose. The privilege of United States citizenship is a priceless and profound gift. The 14th Amendment states all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. That provision rightly repudiated the Supreme Court of the United States' shameful decision in Dred Scott versus Sanford 60, which misinterpreted the Constitution as permanently excluding people of African descent from eligibility for United States citizenship solely based on their race. But the 14th Amendment has never been interpreted to extend citizenship universally to everyone born within the United States. The 14th Amendment has always excluded from birthright citizenship persons who were born in the United States but not subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Consistent with this understanding, the Congress has further specified through legislation that a person born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a national citizen and citizen of the states of birth, generally mirroring the 14th Amendment. So they're saying that, so basically this court case, the Dred Scott court case, set precedent for how, I'm just plugging myself in, for how the 14th Amendment has been interpreted. And they're arguing that it's been misinterpreted, that it was never intended for what it's being used to, people that come into our country. For instance, and you're going to hear examples of this, you'll have women that are almost completely in labor coming over the Rio Grande and giving birth in American hospitals. But before we go even further with that, it was never intended for that purpose. And the argument they're going to use, if you have loyalty, if your loyalty is with another country, then you don't get granted birthright citizenship. So that's what they're going to argue here. And it's really interesting because within this congressional hearing, the person in the panel, you're not going to see her, but there was a person in the panel that was against ending birthright citizenship. But guess what her job title was? Guess. Oh, she's an immigration lawyer. Typically, the people that argue to keep stuff like this, typically the people that argue to keep illegal immigrants into our country, there's always exactly what they said, follow the money. There's always some kind of financial incentive or group behind them. It's never, because no one in their right mind could argue to keep something like this the way that is being used, the way that it is being abused. But clearly, an immigration lawyer has financial and job incentive to keep these things going. So let's go to.
And it would be a disservice not some of the policy implications will come up. And it would be a disservice not to at least mention those important issues implicated by the constitutional question. In addition to twisting the Constitution and court precedent, conferring automatic citizenship is a bad policy. It devalues the meaning of American citizenship by bestowing it to the children of lawbreakers who entered the United States without the consent of its people, almost rewarding them for trespassing into our country's soil. To add context, an estimated 124,000 to 300,000 so-called anchor babies, which are children born to illegal aliens, are born each year according to the Center for Immigration Studies. In 2023, up to 250,000 children were born to illegal aliens in 2023, which accounted for 7% of total births in the nation that year. Moreover, it further strains government programs that are already strained. For example, in terms of supplemental nutrition assistance, SNAP, which provides school meals, Americans shell out $5 billion each year in SNAP and food stamps for the U.S.-born children of illegal aliens, according to a 2023 report by the Federation for American Immigration Reform. If one looks at the amount illegal aliens and their U.S.-born children are projected to consume in federal welfare program benefits, the American taxpayer foots an even larger bill. Take, for example, in a July 2024 report, the Congressional Budget Office that answers to us concluded that the federal government is projected to spend $177 billion in welfare benefits to illegal aliens and their U.S.-born children over the next 10 years. Now, mindful, that is a larger population, but it is clear that the birthright citizenship issue implicates those issues. This $177 billion includes Medicaid, SSI, Obamacare premium tax credits, food stamps, and more. Ending universal birthright citizenship and thereby ending birth tourism, a practice in which pregnant women travel to the United States to give birth and secure citizenship for their children, is good policy. Birth tourism diverts U.S. medical resources away from our own mothers and babies and allows shady and unscrupulous birth tourism agencies, quote unquote, to prey on expectant mothers. According to a 2020 study, there are between 20,000 and 26,000 foreign tourists in the U.S. giving birth on our soil annually. As far back as 2008, the CEO of the McAllen, Texas Medical Center, where about 40% of births were to illegal alien mothers, stated that, quote, mothers about to give birth walk up to the hospital, clearly having just swum across the river in actual labor. Just as concerningly, adversaries like China are abusing universal birthright citizenship and practicing birth tourism to nestle deeper into U.S. society, which carries security concerns. In 2018, Georgetown Law's O'Neill Institute wrote the following, quote, women from foreign countries, mainly China and Russia, are paying tens of thousands of dollars to temporarily relocate to the United States during their pregnancy in order to give birth in the United States and thereby guarantee U.S. citizenship for their child. To shed light on the magnitude of this abuse, China hosts over 500 companies offering birth tourism services, resulting in more than 50,000 Chinese nationals delivering babies in the United States every year, according to a 2019 estimate. The Constitution does not require us to allow this practice, and we should not. Even late Senate Democrat Majority Leader Harry Reid recognized the disastrous policy implications of birthright citizenship as he opposed automatic citizenship for children born to foreigners. He said the following in a 1993 speech on the Senate floor, quote, if making it easy to be an illegal alien isn't enough, how about offering a reward for being an illegal immigrant? No sane country would do that, right?
Yep. So that was a piece of that congressional hearing. And now I'm going to pull up Harriet Hedgeman. She's actually one of my favorites. I really enjoy watching her in congressional hearings. But she brings up the same thing.
Become legal U.S. residents to the family.
All right.
Citizens. Once the children turn 21, they can sponsor their parents to become legal U.S. residents so the family can immigrate to a
So she's speaking about how they're born in the United States, they have this dual citizenship, they grow up in their own country, and when they're old enough, they can come back, they can bring their parents, and like they said, they can join the military. Huge, huge national security risk. And you see, two of the main countries that are doing this are Russia and China.
America. Concerningly, the majority of these birth tourists come from one of America's greatest adversaries, including China. Because of advances in technology, lax surrogacy laws, and the incorrect understanding of the 14th Amendment, countries are now using international surrogacy programs to rent wombs in America. Mr. O'Brien, there is a back and forth in U.S. policy regarding scrutiny and restrictions for birth tourism, including 2 different policies issued in 2015 and 2020. Where does tactic which uses international commercial surrogacy to exploit America's misinterpretation of the
Oops, sorry about that. Did I just put that on there twice? No, I didn't.
Once the children turn 21, they can sponsor their parents to become
Hold the phone.
surrogacy laws. Intended parents who are foreign nationals use a surrogate in or transported to the United States, and the surrogate may be an American woman who then gestates a child for a fee, allowing foreign nationals to essentially rent a room or buy a baby. Mr. O'Brien, under the current wrongful interpretation of the 14th Amendment, this child would gain U.S. citizenship, wouldn't they?
Yes, they would, and because the Immigration and Nationality Act has become a muddle under the weight of misinterpretations about various effects of provisions of the Act, that places the United States in a position where people with no connection to the United States who simply want to be here because they either don't like the political or economic conditions in their home country can then use the citizenship of an adopted child or a surrogate child to try and access the United States and then eventually get lawful permanent residence and become citizens themselves.
So this form of birth tourism actually exacerbates the crisis we have with birth citizenship, requiring direct and exclusive allegiance, which should require direct and exclusive allegiance to the United States. Don't you agree?
Yes, it does. It exacerbates it significantly.
Well, what's very interesting is China banned international surrogacy, yet the international industry is disproportionately fueled by Chinese nationals who make up 41.7% of this surrogacy industry.
Wow. So China itself has banned this, yet they're responsible for 40% of this surrogacy thing, of this international surrogacy scheme into America.
Should this raise national security?
And it's just wild knowing this information. I don't have a clip of her, but sitting on that panel right next to that guy is a woman who's arguing to keep birthright citizenship. The immigration lawyer. How could anyone in their right mind? It's to our own, they're literally arguing to our own detriment. But I guess that immigration lawyer, you know, she has financial incentives. She doesn't care about the country as a whole. She just cares about her bag.
Concerns that China is aggressively participating in a practice that it has banned in its own country?
Yeah.
Yes, China has an established pattern through an organization called the People's Work Bureau of approaching people who have a familial connection to China, regardless of their citizenship, and then pressuring them based on connections to Chinese family members who are still within the PRC to provide intelligence information, whether that be national security information or economic espionage information.
Well, and what's interesting is that these children who are receiving American citizenship, they receive that even if the parents intend to raise them abroad. What are the benefits of having a child with American citizenship?
Well, the benefits of having a child with U.S. citizenship is that child can later sponsor you for lawful permanent residence. It also makes the child eligible for all sorts of things that come along with U.S. citizenship, which is entering and leaving the United States. The implications of that from a national security or criminal perspective are enormous. So this is truly frightening. And it's shocking to me that there is so much debate about this. I think if we're arguing about this, we've sort of lost the concept of what citizenship is and what it means.
I completely agree with him there. It is wild that this is even up for debate. And he's right. It totally devalues what it means to be an American citizen. It's a huge national security threat. How could anyone argue? Why is this even a debate? But this is where the Overton window of our politics are at right now. These types of things are debates. Not only do you have people saying that we could keep this birthright citizenship, even though there is so much evidence that not only is it being abused, it's devaluing what it takes to be an American citizen. It's costing us money. 40% of the births that happen, I can't remember if it's Eagle Pass and Del Rio, one is 40% of the births that happen in that hospital, that guess who's paying for it? Not them. 40% of those births are illegal immigrants. So those are American mothers that are not getting the help that they could be getting. So you have that element. You have the national security element. You have the devaluing of what it means to be an American citizen. You have the welfare system, all of these things. And then you have people that are giving birth and then just going right. They're not even being raised in this country yet. They have citizenship to this country. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. And anyone that is debating against this, my thought would be, okay, you're corrupt or you have financial incentive somehow to keep this going. And your loyalty is clearly to yourself or to whatever corrupt cause, but it's not to America. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you all that story. I'm going to keep up to date with this. I'm so glad that Brian Entin discovered this. This is something I think he's going to be working on for a while. I'm glad this is up for debate and it's being talked about in Washington. Maybe this is a start. Clearly, President Trump has been adamant about wanting to get rid of birthright citizenship, but it's really important to understand what it was intended for. It was never, ever intended to be used this way. Ever. So anyway, thank you all and have a great day.